we have what I think will be undoubtedly the best panel, or I think we're supposed to swear, aren't we? The best panel. The best panel. So my name's John Watts. I'm a managing partner at a consultancy called MTM. We are a media and technology strategy consultancy. We work with all of these lovely people up here and many more besides. Our core focus is helping people understand and respond to digital-driven change. So video and ad tech and all things related are a really core part of what we do. The good news is I'm going to do very little talking for the next half hour. I'm going to be handing over to these three lovely people who are essentially going to make the case one at a time for one of the hottest technologies hitting the video advertising market. You know what they are. We've got VR, we've got AI, we've got blockchain. Three very different technologies, excitingly transformational in the advertising market in completely different ways. We're going to give them each about 8 minutes and I think in some cases 25 slides, which I make it about 20 seconds per slide, to race through the case for their particular technology. Why should we be excited? I'm then going to pepper them with some slightly awkward questions, and then we're going to do the really embarrassing bit and get you guys to vote. The question we're going to ask you to vote on is which of these technologies do you think will have the most transformational impact on the digital video advertising market? Got that? Nods, nods, good. Fantastic. So, without further ado, let's go to our first exec. Sir, the floor is yours. Now, I think you can either do it from the podium or here's the clicker.
I'll stand over here just for fun.
So why don't you introduce yourselves? I've not done it.
When you've got 1 minute left on it, I'm going to give you a little wave.
Don't, I'm on that. Don't worry, Vincent, we've got it.
Oh, you've got it?
We've got it. This is terribly organised. Right, your time starts now.
Okay. Can you hear me all right? Hello, my name's Dominic Stone. I work for IBM. I've got 8 minutes, so I need to be quick. But first of all, I did want to waste a little bit of that time on playing you a short video, so just have a look at this first.
I think you may need to click. Oh, there you
go. Its first birthday. It exceeded our wildest expectations.
Nice to meet you, Morgan.
Nice to meet you, Lee.
I have a 13-year-old daughter. You don't get to see her much anymore.
Don't go in there, okay?
What?
Don't you go down there, Skip.
Don't be afraid, Amy. I have to go say goodbye to Mother.
Okay, that was a bit of fun. Morgan was not a spectacular success as a movie, it has to be said, but it was a good, creepy horror film. I do recommend it. What's interesting about that video is that it was made by a computer. I used to make trailers for a living, and some of them are very challenging and very hard work, but frankly, most of them, by the time you get to the third afternoon in an edit suite and you've got another 40 promos to make, you're really just bashing them out and not thinking too hard. That's the time when I would just have loved to have had some artificial intelligence standing beside me to say, look, why don't I do this one for you? As a trailer, it wasn't bad. It's perhaps not the best one I've ever seen, but still, as one of my colleagues said, good creative use of black. It certainly was good enough to be used theatrically, and it was an interesting example of how you build these things by a combination of AI and human beings, because in fact what happened was Watson made the trailer, then it was played to a professional promo maker, trailer maker, who looked at it and said, oh, you know, Watson, you haven't quite built the tension right, you haven't, I don't think you've got the right establishing shots. Watson had another go. On about the fourth iteration, it was considered acceptable. But of course, that's exactly how I, as an up-and-coming trailer producer, operated as well, with somebody more senior giving me some clues as I went along. So, what's this all about? It's all about the notion of disruptive change. The reason why artificial intelligence is so interesting at the moment is because we're living in a world of massive change. And the change is not continual and gradual, it is disruptive, with conflicting models that come along, things like Uber, taxi cabs that challenge the way existing systems operate. To do that, you need to have some very flexible way of responding to it. And that leads to this notion of architecting for disruption. Because after all, when you think about the number of threats that we have, the number of new startups, 240,000 new startups worldwide every day. And that actually is an underestimate, because that was only based on the countries that accurately report those figures. You know, we are living in a very, very challenging and disrupted world, and we need to have very rapid ways of responding to it. The way to respond to it is not to see it as being scary, but to see it as being a positive. And what we're seeing is the emergence of a new kind of recognition of expertise. Because, in fact, everybody's an expert. You know, a traditional 1970s housewife in a supermarket is an expert in working their way around that supermarket, finding out where the best things are. For her, if there's somebody standing beside her saying, did you realize that that thing's on special, or this thing has opened up, or there's some other new opportunity, that actually adds to her expertise. And the key to being able to take opportunities out of all of this disruption is to, in fact, enhance expertise, to make experts more expert. And that's what artificial intelligence is all about, is taking essential experiences and using technology to make those experiences more valuable. And it works in two ways, because it works both at the production side in media, as we saw with the Morgan trailer, where you can actually have a machine that can do the basics, that can turn out a competent product. It may not be able to make the most imaginative one, but that's not the object of the exercise. Actually, the object of the exercise is to leave people like I once was going, gee, actually, Watson, you've done something that's really scarily good. I need to lift my game. And so there is, in fact, an iterative process taking place where expertise is actually gaining all the time. And we've seen this again and again where we've demonstrated, Watson, in situations like ingesting a contract that's 150 pages long and then asking Watson questions like, this is a movie contract, can I run this movie in Botswana? And Watson goes, well, you kind of can, but you know, you've got substantive rights, but you don't have underlying rights, so you can't make coffee cups and T-shirts, but you can run the movie. For more information, see page 132, paragraph 6. Lawyers love that. Lawyers go, I really want that. Non-lawyers go, oh yeah, kind of interesting. And this is the point about artificial intelligence. Good artificial intelligence is actually about making experts more expert. And how do they do it? They do it through understanding, cognitive systems that are capable of understanding, listening, and then reasoning, actually making some sense of it. And on the audience-facing side, this is particularly important. It allows artificial intelligence systems to perform audience analytics in a way that's never been done before. With social media analytics, it's actually possible to treat virtually the whole world as one giant survey group. One giant focus group, if you like. They also learn. We've heard about machine learning, and it's become a bit of a ho-hum phrase now, but it's actually terribly important that each time you go around the loop, it gets better and better, and the machine understands more and more. Thank you. And in fact, I've got there a glass of water that was given to me by a machine in the lobby that some of you may have experimented with, and it was kind of an interesting example. So, artificial intelligence can only work when it can run free, when it can sit in the cloud. And this is where cloud, which was all becoming a bit ho-hum until recently, has suddenly got really exciting again. Because when you can locate artificial intelligence in the cloud, it can access massive amounts of data. And what that means is that you start to see lots of people saying, hey, this is actually really good. And there are heaps of examples of why this really works. And so the bottom line, to architect for disruption, you need to have some form of artificial intelligence or cognitive, and artificial intelligence, I think, is really a very, very, very powerful tool. Thank you.
Dominic, one quick question from me just before we get started. Thank you for keeping for time. That's my alarm going off. Question for me, is AI actually a very helpful term? I think your Morgan video, I suspect everybody's thinking that Morgan is the AI rather than the machine that cut the trailer. In a sense, there's no intelligence in artificial intelligence. It's rules-based machine learning. Is that a better definition?
I was told a long time ago that intelligence tests test what intelligence is defined as, and that's all. There's really no such thing as intelligence, in the sense that, as I said before, expertise is actually operates in different places. I'm not intelligent when it comes to cabinet making, but I'm reasonably intelligent when it comes to editing trailers. So artificial intelligence is all about applying machine skills to complex situations. Right. So it is a real phrase, but I think the interesting thing is the reason why IBM tends to use the term cognitive alongside artificial intelligence is because of this notion that it's all about actually enhancing what people are doing rather than trying to outguess them or outsmart them.
Question answered. Let's move on. Greg, do you want to make the case for VR?
Sure.
I'll wait for you to get up there, and then...
Can I borrow the clicker?
Oh, sorry.
That's very much cheating, Dominic.
As long as it doesn't count towards my time, it's fine. Yeah.
Greg, off you go.
Oh, wait,
Oh.
wait, go. Maybe. Go. Right, hi. I'm Greg Ferber. I'm a creative director at a company called Rewind, and we do what we like to say is Rewind fuses bleeding-edge technology with award-winning creative storytelling, which is a really grand way of saying we get to make stuff like this.
And it goes a little something like this. Here we go.
Tight on time, so I'll skip ahead. But what is exciting is that we get to use technology to make everything in the virtual space. I'm going to talk to you very quickly about the touchstones of VR and what we kind of include in that bracket. So it's everything from 360 video all the way to true VR. So things shot on adapted camera systems that can be played on YouTube, on Facebook, and things like that, through to real-time, effectively video game experiences where you are in a space and able to explore it and be a part of a new world that only exists inside the virtual world. The 360 end is fun, and it's been an excuse for me to hop all around the world and film cool shit, like people doing backflips over cars. The true VR end is where we get to do the stuff that's a lot more powerful and engaging and can really affect change in people. And now I'm going to lean on science. So, oh no, first I'm going to do numbers. So the elephant in the room with VR is that it's not really here, it's not really a real thing, and the hardware sales aren't great. You can all fuck off. It's true, it's here, it's staying. Much like TV, when TV was a thing where you went to someone's house and you'd all gather around the box and stuff like that, that's where we are at VR. VR has only been on the market since last year. So to expect it to be where TV was, or the computer is, or the internet is just ridiculous. So the fact that in the last year, what is it, 5 million by the end, 3 million by the end of this year, 5 million units by the end of next year, that is a sizable market. And that's just the dedicated VR hardware. When you get into AR and VR apps, and so things like your iPhone now being live with ARKit, suddenly things are getting really interesting, and the market is growing, and the things you can do with it are expanding. 360 video makes way more sense on your phone than on your desktop. You can put your phone in a Gear VR, in a Daydream, in one of the hundreds of shitty cardboard knockoffs, and do something that's fun and engaging. And over time, you're going to get standalone headsets that appear in everyone's homes and become just as much a thing as watching the TV. And most excitingly, nicely cropped, very helpful, thank you, there are 2.16 billion smartphones globally. That is a big fucking number. And what's exciting about that is that these smartphones over time will become VR devices, will become 360 devices. We live in a world where parts of the world do not have access to a TV, do not have access to a computer, but have the internet and a smartphone as their portal to the world. And your smartphone can also be your portal to VR. So I'm not going to say there's 2.16 billion VR users coming, but actually the number will drift towards that as people upgrade, as people hand down phones. These devices that are smartphones that are VR and AR enabled will be in more and more people's hands, making it a much more real and actual thing. Cool. Right, the fun bit. So, what is unique about VR compared to any advertising medium, and I'm sorry, I am going to dig on out of home. I'm sorry. But you have people who are 100% focused and 100% engaged. Now, in the modern day, that is virtually impossible in any other medium. To have complete control over someone's eyes and ears for even a minute is a privilege that no other medium has. And that's what's really exciting about VR. You are taking people to another world, to another place, to another whatever you've created, and giving them a chance to be in that space, and most importantly for you guys, to listen to your message and participate in your message. Making people feel makes them act. And then there's science that the font has gone crazy for. Brilliant. Looks much nicer in Keynote. Anyway, so 2015, United Nations used VR to tell the plight of the Syrian refugees. And the bit that's got smushed up is it inspired 1 in 6 who viewed it to donate. And with a typical return on kind of demoing these things where you get about 1% return, people who went through the VR experience, 15% of them donated. They saw something, they were moved by it, it changed how they feel about something, and they reacted. And in a very noticeable and meaningful way that made a huge uptake in donations for the UN and UNICEF, but also in a way that made a difference to people's lives. VR can impact memory. This is where it gets weird. So, I have been on 90% of the shoots Rewind have done. That's awesome. But those other 10%, I sometimes think I've been on those shoots because I'm used to watching the things in the experience. I'm used to seeing things in VR. And I kind of forget that's the one I didn't do. It can leave an impression in your mind. But that's not just me that thinks that. Science thinks it. Or it did if my flight was still there. There we go. So, bit dodgy, but tested it on kids, which is a great idea, because kids are really impressionable. This is the fastest I've done this talk, and it is exhausting. Right, so they got a load of kids who'd never seen a whale before, put them in a VR experience, saw a whale. The thing is, after they saw that whale in VR, for the next couple of weeks, they genuinely remembered having had an experience with a whale that really happened. They thought they had experienced something real and physical because they'd seen it for their eyes and their ears. Those two senses control so much of what we think that actually, if you experience something compelling in that medium, you buy into it. And this, especially for brands, can be huge because also VR can change the way we behave. Another science, Stanford, this time they got people to cut down a tree. Fine, so what? But what they were doing by getting to cut down the tree was showing them how much tree goes into toilet paper. And what they were trying to do is see if they could affect the amount of tree or toilet paper that people use. And what they found is people who went through the VR experience used half as much toilet paper because they were aware of the size of the tree that went into it and the impact that has around them. They thought, probably just fold it.
1 minute.
So, it is immersive, it is memorable, and it is impactful because you can't put a price on that, and the other side is gone. So, what we like to say, and this is where it gets a bit diggy out of home, you see your KPIs, you see a lot of people walking past, you can say 1 million people walk past my billboard at Waterloo, you clearly have some very good metrics that say how many of them interacted with it, and I'm not going to dispute them. But most people don't look up, most people are distracted, much like this room, most people are on their phone, they're on Twitter, they're doing other things, their life is happening somewhere else. But with VR, 1,000 impressions, 1,000 people that stop and go through your experience can create a meaningful change in them that is unique to your experience and will go on and stay with them, not just for the rest of that day, but potentially for the rest of their life. And that is VR.
I was exhausted watching you, and you've knocked over the stand now.
Yeah. Hi.
I have one basic
Of course
question.
you do. 3D TV, go.
Your case for VR, basically, at the end of the day, is going to rest on take-up.
Yes.
Why is this not the next 3D?
3D or 3D TVs?
I mean 3D TV specifically.
So 3D TVs were universally shit and badly deployed. So everyone that saw Avatar at the cinema went, whoa, that's amazing. They went out to the lobby and went, oh no, that was really shit. I really enjoyed it. And it's because really well done 3D can be powerful, can drop you into an experience, but there's a few things that 3D TV did very wrong. Number one, Clash of the Titans remake. The worst film ever, and also the worst 3D ever, because it was just cards. It was just nothing. It wasn't adding anything to the experience. People saw 3D as an excuse to make money, mark up ticket prices, and get people into shitty films that they didn't enjoy. So they didn't enjoy 3D. The at-home experience was terrible. What's different about VR is easy. You are definitely feeling like you're in that world, and the easiest way of knowing that it works and 3D TV doesn't is the look on people's faces the first time they go in VR. We've got what we call the VR grin, and it is the stupid, gormless, magical expression on your face when you believe you're somewhere else. 3D TV never delivered that. VR delivers that consistently, so I know it's something different and better.
Question answered. Thank you so much. Right, moving swiftly and seamlessly on.
Okay.
Stacey, are you ready?
I am.
Do you want to click your first slide, just so you're... Keep going. There you go.
There we go. Oh,
Right,
the
your
fonts
time.
did not make it, so oh well.
Oh, right. Well, sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
Blame the organisers. We should. Right, on your marks, get set, go.
Okay, so I'm Stacy Huggins. I am the co-founder and CMO of MadHive. I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit called Ledger that is ad tech industry's digital blockchain consortium. We have about 60 members, and we're gaining some membership here in the UK as well. So what I'm going to do is probably just confuse you more than you already are, given the short time period. Typically, talking about blockchain just brings up more and more questions for folks, but I will do my best to dispel some myths and try to get you to understand exactly how this could be applicable to ad tech. Okay, so blockchain's the internet of value, so they say. There are a few things, like as far as blockchain 101 to understand. First of all, there are public blockchains and there are private blockchains. So blockchains, a blockchain like Bitcoin, for instance, that's public, that's open. It takes about 10 minutes to run through the consensus algorithm of Bitcoin and make sure that all of the nodes that are running on this distributed ledger, in fact, have all the correct information. So that would never work in ad tech. So whenever you hear somebody talking about latency issues, speed issues, and potentially using the entire computing power in the entire universe to run ad tech, they are simply not a subject matter expert, and they haven't read enough about the advances in blockchain technology. There are things called state channels, which help to reconcile transactions back and forth and do a trailing audit. There are lots of advances in blockchain technology. And also, when we talk about blockchain and the application to ad tech, we are not talking about a public blockchain. We're talking about private blockchains that are permissioned ledgers. And when we talk about sharing a similar database, I am actually not talking about dumping all of your valuable data into a public blockchain for all the world to see. What I'm really talking about is having there be a permissioned ledger that you can query if you have the permission to access it, and data trading using cryptographic keys. So I will explain most of that in more detail. So this we heard from Richard Kramer, basically that ad tech is in fact broken. It was probably the best presentation on ad tech's organized crime that I have ever seen. It was very good. So this is one of the main problems that we're dealing with. So major margin compression and a lack of return on investment for the advertiser. So the way ad tech is set up is that it is based on its own profitability. So the middlemen make the most money, and it's at the expense of the edges. So what really blockchain aims to do as the most important piece, and the piece that the advertisers and the publishers should understand, is that it helps to move the economic value from the middle out into the edges. So what is the real problem? We heard a little bit about this earlier, but really where ad tech, we talk to each other through a series of APIs, which could be like the equivalent of me talking to you through Google Translate if we didn't speak the same language. So it's a very inefficient way to communicate from machine to machine. So blockchain really aims to have us all share the same exact database through permissioned, which makes this whole process seem much more efficient. And it also means that some of those costs go away. Like you would not have to verify the same impression over and over and over again, because once Moat verifies an impression, then that gets signed and it's shown as a digital signature or a hash on the ledger. And any on the advertiser side or the buy side or the sell side can actually query that blockchain. So you get an understanding of measurement in a way that you never could before. So measurement is obviously way too reliant on Nielsen and Facebook right now. And so if you could actually see what's really happening in a more transparent way, then perhaps you wouldn't have to be so reliant. So this is supply chain efficiency. All the costs go down, and the Ledger Consortium, as I mentioned, these are all both buyers and sellers and agencies getting together to actually talk about what are you willing to write to a blockchain? What am I willing to write to a blockchain? Do we all agree that we're at least willing to write this certain information to a blockchain so that you can see it, so that all boats rise? So the idea there is that, you know, I may say, okay, well, we can show auction dynamics, for instance. Little tricky part about auction dynamic transparency is that you might actually do away with some of the massive amount of arbitrage. But that's a good thing for the buyers and the sellers, of course. So really what we're trying to do is do something similar to what Uber has done, what Airbnb has done. It brings the buyers and sellers closer together. So how does it work? A couple different tools. Smart contracts and cryptographic keys. Smart contracts are just applications, almost like virtual machines or large relational tables. If this, then that. You can even put regulatory restrictions in code so that it runs, like GDPR, for instance. Something that blockchain is really great at is a simple chain of custody. So if you want to see provenance of data, you simply hand over a cryptographic key to your data partner, write the fact that you did that to a blockchain. Then when you don't want that partner to have that data anymore, or if a user asks to be forgotten, you simply dial a webhook and revoke the key, and then you're done. So that's how cryptographic keys work. Smart contracts will basically replace the deal ID in a programmatic environment where all of the insertion order terms and conditions are entered and the human element is taken out altogether. Okay, so these are some of the advantages for the demand side. Transparent inventory sources. You can always see in a hash at the impression level who's running the actual impression. You can see the auction dynamics. You can see cross-network frequency capping and where are your ads running if you're doing a cross-platform buy. So the governance is available in code. You can employ those cryptographic keys to protect first-party data. Very important. Blockchain really helps to prevent data leakage. So you can have discounted data enrichment if you have some kind of a data trading platform, for instance. You can query a ledger for quick impression level detail, and then you can also reconcile for payments much faster. So sell side, you can actually own your data asset. So that whole data donation thing doesn't exist. All right, so we know that the duopoly is very threatening, right? So what do you do in order to combat it? A peer-to-peer network, blockchain-backed network DMP. Imagine NBC, ABC, Hulu, and Fox are all writing to a ledger. These symbols are all different types of impressions. Fox wants to show an ad to an auto intender because they make the most money from that ad. So they ask the ledger. Now, not just Hulu or NBC, it could be MasterCard, it could be Ericsson, are all involved. In real time, they can say, yes, in fact, you do have an auto intender. They're right there. And through different utility tokens or nano payments, you can actually pay for that information. And also, that was given to Fox using cryptographic keys, which expire, so they actually can't keep that data. There are probably a million questions that you have right now based on all of that, but that is the high-level overview. Thanks.
My big takeaway is you should each have had half an hour. I could have listened for a while. 8 minutes, bad idea. Thankfully, not mine. Quick question for you then, just before we move on to a little quick discussion. Who's really going to make blockchain happen? Who actually has to do what to drive some sort of mass adoption?
Well, the edges, for sure.
Right.
But most importantly, I think it'll come from the advertisers, because the advertisers are going to have to demand similar to what Mark Pritchard did at P&G. He's going to demand a certain amount of transparency and to clean up the murky supply chain, or else they'll withhold dollars. So that'll move markets, and then potentially even something like GDPR, where there's regulatory downward pressure in order to infuse some more transparency.
So it's a little bit like relative, say, viewability standards, in a sense.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, really, blockchain has a cold start problem, but the internet had a cold start problem as well, as I had mentioned yesterday. So it's really going to depend on the motivation and the incentives that are there. And I think there are plenty of incentives for the edges of the supply chain, not so many for the middle.
Now, we are hideously short of time.
Right.
I think Vincent's not doing his wave yet, but it's coming. I can feel it. So we're going to do, we'll do 3 questions, then we'll go to the audience, so rest assured. So question 1 for each of you, and I just want to make it really clear and practical. Let's just work our way down. Play the tape forwards 3 years. What do you see as being the most profound impact of the technology you are championing on the video advertising industry? What really will look different if this really works and delivers what you're sort of suggesting it could do?
But in 3 years, you will have 20 million plus installed VR headsets. And
globally? Or?
Globally.
Yep.
And I think it's about 50 million VR and AR enabled phones in the marketplace. These are people you can all serve up content to directly in VR. By that point, you'll be at a place where you'll be having your free-to-play advertised content and things like that. People are already making adverts for VR, and you'll also be able to have embedded advertising in experiences. So the billboard in the virtual world, those guys will sell it to you.
So your case basically is that for 20 million people. Your case is that for 20 million people, we can deliver an incredibly powerful, immersive...
That's 20 million headsets as well.
Okay,
so the average headset is used by 3 to 5 people.
Right.
So already that goes up straight away. So it's a big audience, but then it's getting that kind of cresting point, and it's coming quickly, and the devices are getting cheaper. The standalones are coming out. You know, Google have got their own ones coming, and it's going to be big. It's just
so essentially for a small and particular group of people, we can deliver an incredibly immersive, powerful advertising experience in the context of their bigger VR
And
experience.
the people that are spending that money are the people you're going to want to be targeting as well. I think that's the point. They are people that can afford expensive technology, find it desirable, and find it a lifestyle aspiration.
Fine. Stacey, the blockchain case in the digital video advertising market?
Well, I think you just saw the animation. That's what I feel like the future is really an ability to handle both payments and create new revenue streams and allow there to be a massive amount of data trading, so that NBC, ABC, so that they don't have to lose their own direct sales teams. Facebook could essentially become a rep firm for all of these content companies.
And for any individual company, if I understood the animation, it's essentially some incremental margin benefits.
Absolutely, margin benefits, but also the ability to increase the overall targeting footprint. So Facebook's audience network has unparalleled targeting, but if you pool together a giant amount of data that everyone is pooling together and has access to via a distributed ledger, what you get is the same, you're then at parity with Facebook.
So from that point of view, that's pretty transformative, to say the least.
Yes.
I feel the case being made. AI then, so what does good look like 3 years out in the digital video advertising market?
I think the point about AI is that it has reached a threshold where now everybody's asking what is it capable of and how will it impact what we do, rather than saying is it a flash in the pan and will it go away. So it is in a sense now already embedded in business planning. The degree to which it will penetrate campaign management, audience analytics, production of ads, all of those kinds of things is really a matter for individual organizations to play with.
But what's the most powerful application you've seen to date?
in today's world, the most powerful application is in audience analytics. There's no doubt of that. The ability to be able to take a whole audience and actually understand what they're thinking as individuals as well as groups and as multiple groups, to segment them in different ways, requires a level of number crunching and analysis that really has only been possible since the rise of AI. But I think that's there, that's happening right now. The next stage is to turn that into complex campaign management, complex development of content.
So essentially this is really about delivering incredible efficiencies when we're operating at tremendous digital scale across lots of platforms and devices with huge amounts of data and optimizing furiously.
Yeah, it's really only possible to in a sense take the technologies that we have to a next stage with some form of AI underpinning it. It underpins VR, it underpins blockchain, it underpins all of the things that we're doing. It hasn't yet reached a full level of maturity, but in a sense its growth path is now very clear.
And one quick question then, is the barrier, in a sense, price? I mean, is it very expensive for an organization to come to IBM? You guys kind of like to deal with billion-dollar contracts. Is this something that a small digital video business can really benefit from? Or is this a game for big girls and boys?
No, I don't think the barrier is price at all. I think the barrier is, to some extent, that I think Stephen Hawking's observation that AI is the most dangerous thing he's ever come across, and could mean the end of the human race, is an observation not to be taken lightly. And I think the challenge for AI is that it's a threat as well as an opportunity, and I think we have to understand that and manage that.
And that's the barrier. Now, I think we've got probably time for questions quickly, if there are any. This is your chance to ask any of these three gurus pretty much anything you want about their technology. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, pretty much. And nobody wants to take it.
Oh, no, somebody does.
Great question.
Oh,
scary
well,
question.
Without a doubt. Yeah. It's an interesting, I mean, in a sense, it's something I think all three of us have toyed with in the course of just thinking about this session, that you're absolutely right. The three are, in a sense, complementary. They are interdependent. It is possible to construct in your mind a world where the combination of those technologies means a much better way of getting messages across, a much better way of being entertaining and informative, and a much better way of understanding marketplaces. No doubt of that.
I think it's also very easy to imagine, already in VR and AR, we're looking at playing with those things and bring them in, but you can imagine creating content that is based on your learning of people and your learning of what you create for these people, making adaptive experiences that respond to your mood, your feeling, whatever on that day, and gives you the space you want to be in, serves you content relevant to it in that thing. I think if you think of VR in this instance as the platform, and then these as the inputs, then you can get something that's really powerful and will really kind of make a difference.
Yes, I agree. Blockchain is actually, if you consider blockchain like a worldwide database, if you put a machine learning layer on top of that, it could do pretty amazing things, I would imagine, because there's a lot of data available once you start writing to a blockchain.
Vincent, are you doing your wave thing yet?
I'm not.
We're good. So fantastic. So we had a question down here.
It was more or less exactly the same.
Okay. And then we had a question over here. We have a poll. We'll come to that, I figure. There's some gentleman over there.
Yeah, a question, I guess, for Stacy. You haven't been able to see the publishers get together to agree on pretty much anything.
Right.
So how do you get everybody to donate their data into a blockchain as opposed to one of the large, billion-user data sets? And my question for Greg is, many of us don't want to wear these giant clunky things on our faces. How do you get over that user experience of putting one of these masks on effectively and giving someone a feeling that like you have a VR experience without looking like a complete dork?
So, Stacey, do you want to go first?
Sure.
It's a coordination problem, isn't it?
Well, no, it's also, if you think about it, though, it's a little bit of a perspective shift, is that based on the data donation that you talked about earlier, they're already giving their data away. They're giving their data away to middlemen in order to help, create audience segments. So they're already giving it away. And they're not making any money for it. They give it away once, and then that middleman profits from it forever. So this is a way for them to actually maintain an ownership of their data and create a brand new revenue stream from it. And also, you know, as I said before, all boats rise if they have all this available data. It's really the only way that I can imagine going up against a Facebook or Google in terms of overall targeting prowess, really. But yes, it's like herding cats. I'm sure it's not going to be it's not going to be that easy. But they do have the incentives there. It's just a little bit of a perspective shift.
For me, there's a few things. First of all, that just if you look at how much the headsets have improved from the DK1 through to something like the Daydream, which has got a better screen than the DK1 ever had, but a much more comfortable user experience, the sort of thing you don't mind spending time in, that helps massively. Number two, I think the content is getting better, so you're not going to care about being a dork or anything like that, or if it messes up your hair, or if it's a bit uncomfortable, because actually your excitement to be in it and experience it is going to be big enough. And then I think you just need to look at things like Snapchat spectacles and stuff like that. People are wearing cameras on their head. Magic Leap is coming out at some undefined time, but if you believe the Morse code on the website, it's December. But whenever it hits, it's glasses. It's coming into wearables in a very real way. And you might not, VR may never be for you, but I guarantee you if it's not, you'll be wearing a pair of AR glasses quite comfortably. And I think the technology that all fits in that ecosystem will have the, much like you have the person that wants an iPad and the person that's happy with a Nokia, you know, you'll find these balances and you'll find these troughs, and it will just be enough variety out there that anyone can find the device they want that's right for them, their lifestyle, and their desires.
Do you think AR is a gateway drug into VR?
Yes, just because I love the
because we see them as very separate, I must confess.
No, completely not. They are part of a sliding scale. AR is a layer over your physical world, and then VR is a complete layer of your physical world, and AR has its daily use cases, VR has its maybe daily or weekly use cases, and AR is very much to that progression, and also the thing that is getting people comfortable with that layer, with that device on their face, with that screen in front of their eyes, and you will see adoption of people moving from AR to VR very quickly.
Okay. Do we have a final question? No. Yeah, we do. One final question.
This question is for you, Stacy, in the blockchain. I've heard that argument a bunch of times, that there are a bunch of middlemen that tax between the advertiser and the publisher. Every one of those companies gets licensed by either one of those sides. And in theory, not always, but in theory, they add value, right? So we know that Moat tells us something about inventory that you wouldn't otherwise know. So if you eliminate that, how do you retain the value in the blockchain without eliminating the cost?
You don't eliminate them. They are still there. However, you know, if they add true value, their true value rises to the top. And those middlemen who are actually not providing much value or are more about arbitrage and are more about, you know, taxing as opposed to really providing real value, that becomes very apparent very quickly. So Moat doesn't go away. Moat actually spins up a node and is writing their verification data to a blockchain that's easily queried by both sides. So it's not, that's also another misconception of blockchain. It doesn't get rid of middlemen, but the ones that are most important and add the most value, they get more and more successful, and those that do not and are really just about censorship of information. So that's where blockchain really helps the industry stakeholders, is that if a middleman is withholding information that puts you at a great disadvantage, blockchain is helpful and can eliminate that. However, it certainly does not get rid of the verification companies, and also blockchain can't tell whether or not a human being saw an ad. You still need companies that deal with you know, heuristic data like integral ad science.
Right, I think we should go to a vote, and then we've got a final question for the panel just to wind things up. So I think there's a nice voting man in a suit somewhere who's going to tell us how this vote thing was going to work. He hasn't told me, unfortunately. No? Vincent, do you know anything about the nice vote man?
Jordan?
Jordan, the vote man.
Yeah.
Ah. Ah, so what's this?
Yeah, the URL at the top. So just for anyone who arrived late, I think quite a few people have done this.
Right.
But the URL is at the top. You just put your email address and you will be able to vote straight away.
So we've got, okay.
Go on.
Massive confidence.
Keep going.
Keep going, okay. So I think it was shocking. I suspect it was 3 of these questions.
Yay!
Every time you talk, it seems to go down a little.
I know, keep quiet.
Right, okay, so I think we're at 67%-ish.
Oh, shady.
Crushed.
It's you talking that's doing it, not me.
So sorry.
Only 6 people have voted so far. So
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I can see you doing the maths.
Right, so we're at 57%. Should we jump to the next one? So, same deal, agree, disagree. 57%, to score to beat. Keep voting, keep voting. Oh. Right, so let's pause there. So 74%. Oh, no.
Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
These numbers seem curiously similar. Should we jump? Okay, so 69%. And then should we jump to our third and final score, which is our AI one? Transform the face of the advertising industry. Vote away. I think you may be heading for a 100% score.
No one's got signal.
No one.
Otherwise, I'd be voting. I couldn't get on the Wi-Fi. Yeah, but that's a bot, isn't it?
Are people still voting? Are we nearly done? Right, okay, I think based on this entirely scientific poll,
Wow.
it seems that we have a winner. IBM and AI have dominated the debate and have obviously crushed the opposition. But I think it was a pretty close-run thing myself, based on that. I had a final quick question for panel then, just before we exit to a final panel, I think. Apart from your tech, what's the most overrated and, overhyped and underrated current tech that that is bubbling around?
Right now, I'm going to say blockchain and AI, but you know.
One or the other. Nothing springs to mind.
Feel free to choose.
You're going to go blockchain, yeah, okay.
No, I'm not.
I suspect the other two may go VR.
VR, yeah.
The thing that stands out for you at the moment, from a tech point of view, as being...
I would not say that any of the 3 are overhyped. I do... The one that annoys me is cyber terrorism, which I think is ludicrously overhyped. I think it's a really scary thing that living as technologists, we live in a world where bombs are really dangerous. You know, guns, as we know very, very recently, are very, very unpleasant things. Cyber terrorism has occupied headlines in ways that I simply think is incomprehensible. I accept the fact that cybersecurity is terribly important, and indeed, you know, IBM and its partners and competitors work very hard to come up with secure systems. But the ultimate threat of cyber terrorism is disruptive, confusing, irritating, expensive, but it's nothing on a par with somebody actually doing something stupid with a car or a plane or a bomb or a gun. So I just think it's hugely overhyped.
Okay.
And I just
Stacey, you ever find anything
I have to
underhyped or
say-
overrated?
I have to say VR.
Yeah.
Is which?
Underrated.
No,
Underrated.
it's a little overhyped right now.
Right.
I've experienced it. It's really fun and really cool, but its overall impact, like, you know, with Pokemon Go,
That wasn't VR.
That wasn't VR. Oh, that was AR.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so virtual reality, I would say VR. It's a little overhyped still.
Jolly good.
It's fine.
I thought you'd like a final chance for nitpicking. Right, thank you very much to our panel.